What is going on, folks? And welcome to season 5. That's right, folks. You heard it here first. Season 5 of Secondhand Talent. What a milestone. Thank you all so much for being here with us along for this ride. For those people who have been tuning in for a while, thank you so much. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of you, our fans, our guests, past, present, and future, all of the people who have been so kind as to appear on this show where we shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights and interview all of the villagers in the village of live music. I want to take a moment real quick just to thank Luke Chu, the artist behind this toy right here, the Lo-Fi, of which we'll be featuring throughout the entire season. And I would like to thank, of course, Tenacious Toys for sponsoring the show since day one. But enough of all that. Let's get to it. We have with us, in honor of Days Between, a very, 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 very special guest, folks. We have master luthier and founder of Scarlet Fire Guitars, Leo Elliott. Leo, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is a genuine pleasure. I know this is something we have been talking about for a while, getting you on the show, and I'm so glad we're finally not just able to make it happen, but to kick off season 5. I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. We're going to kick off this interview the same way we've kicked off the last 79. We've got to ask the question, Leo, the first time you and I had talked or you got wind of the podcast, Secondhand Talent, what did you think? What was the first thing that came to your mind when you heard the name?
Well, first of all, I thought it was it made perfect sense instantly to me, I think. The idea that that we all know who the talent is, but really there are so many people that make these people what they are, make their job possible, enhance what they do, take the load off them, whatever it is. So I think that in that vein, a secondhand talent is apropos.
Yeah, I thank you. I mean, that was a really eloquent response, and it's so amazing to me. Now on the precipice here of our 5th season, I feel like every time I ask that question, I used to say I get a different answer every time. And now lately what I've been saying is it's getting harder and harder to ask that question. But, I first had, this was really started in part by a luthier, our second ever interview here and our second ever repeat guest for the second ever time on Secondhand Talent was Mike Leighton of MJL Guitars. And his logic and his reasoning for becoming a luthier was, I could never really shred the way that I really wanted to shred. My favorite guitarists could shred. So I was like, let me build the thing that they shred with. And I got to ask, just to start, where do your personal roots in music come from, and what led you down the path of crafting instruments?
So, I was originally a bass player. I very early on in the 8th grade, my buddies had all formed a band, and they needed a bass player. There wasn't a bass player, and I took some of my bar mitzvah money, some of my by this time had matured bonds. And against my mom's wishes, grabbed some of those, cashed them in, and went to the melody shop with 2 of my former bandmates. And
yeah, I hear that
alarms
also
outside. Anyways, and so my bandmates and they so we went to the melody shop in Dallas, Texas. I bought a TKO 65 PV amp and a PV single with a P bass. And we all carried it home on the DART bus. I mean, the bus. I lived, Crestwood Mall was probably 3 miles away, and we had to walk a good mile from the stop with the thing. We all took.
For folks who don't know the area, can you explain what that means? So
anyway, buses weren't a big thing. Mass transit wasn't a big thing in Dallas, Texas. It's not like most cities. So it was kind of a newer thing. And we didn't have, we're 8th grade. And I was doing this really, my mom wasn't going to take me. She didn't even want me to do it. So we just took the bus up to the Melody Shop, which is Presswood Mall, probably a mall within, I don't know, 3 miles of the house. And, went in there, went to the bank, got the money, went to the Melody Shop, and then had to carry the stuff out of the mall. This TKO 65 amp, probably, I don't know, it probably weighed 60, 70 pounds. I mean, we were kids, it was a, bass amp.
Weighed as much as each of you, basically.
Damn close. Fred was the keyboard player. He played trumpet in the band and played keyboard. And he was kind of a big kid. And anyway, so he did a lot of the heavy lifting at that point, but we just kind of took turns, like kind of lugging it. We got it to the band practice. My friend Danny Handler, who's since passed away of cancer, but amazing drummer, ended up going to North Texas, was in the 1 O'Clock Lab Band. I mean, was a real session player down in Austin. But anyway, so that was kind of how I got my start playing bass. Played in bands through high school, and it wasn't until I think it was in 10th grade. I had a friend who turned me on to Jerry Garcia, and he's like, "Man, you got to check this guy out." I mean, before that, I loved Hendrix, Clapton, the Beatles, all kinds of stuff. I grew up as kind of a metal.
For context, just for our
Sure.
listeners and readers understand, if you've already been to folks like Clapton and Hendrix, we're already, in the early 70s era.
Yeah.
So about when were you introduced to Jerry's music?
So that would have been, okay. So anyways, I'm 53.
Or 52.
It will be 53. I'm close. I mean, it's my year. So anyways, the point, I'm 52 now. I was born in 72. I'm thinking, ahead of myself. The point is, so I grew up on probably, heavy metal was real big in the 80s, and, I love, I had a portable CD player, it was made by Toshiba. It literally was supposed to be portable. It took, I think, 6D batteries or something. I mean, it was huge. This battery pack attached to it. It was the first one that came out, or you could plug it in and this big triangular battery came on the back. But there were only two discs available back then. Shout at the Devil and Led Zeppelin 4. And it was the original copy of Led Zeppelin 4 was horrible. I mean, like fidelity wise.
Yeah.
But,
it was like those, you remember when, you put those black Panasonic headphones on that hurt no matter where you put them, and that they had no bass and you just had to turn it louder. Everything was just the most flat sounding, like there's no detail to this music whatsoever.
Yeah. And that probably could have been a lot drivers could have, probably a lot about it, but, so, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, that kind of stuff. I was really into that as a young kid. And then kind of Led Zeppelin was kind of the first band I was really, really into. We had a place called Bill's Records and Tapes, which was like a underground record store within a couple miles of my house. And, if you knew Bill real well and he thought you were cool, he'd take you to the back, see all the cool stuff, the illegal stuff, the bootlegs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we bought, my friends and I would get together and spend $70 back then on a double or 3 album set of Led Zeppelin live. Blueberry Hills was one, and a bunch of ones, classic Zeppelin bootlegs that sounded like shit. I mean, they're probably a guy with a broom.
They sounded like shit, but I feel like if you're a metal fan, you want that kind of atonal garage garbage sound in the first place. And then second of all, I feel like especially live Zeppelin, especially Rip Boots, those are that's probably the easiest, smoothest segue transition from metal to rock and roll that exists.
Sure. Yeah. That's where I go more a blues. I started to get more
thinking Kashmir, da-da-da, 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 that's metal.
Yeah, it is kind of very heavy metal, and really heavy distortion and really a lot of blues based. I remember reading Hammer of the Gods, that first one of the first Zeppelin, reading about the band and their, all the exploits, the time of the Orleans Hotel and the LA Forum and all the crazy, stuff. And I'm completely into rock and roll. Zeppelin, I was just nuts over. like some AC/DC and stuff. But that was the first band I was just like really obsessed with. So, in high school, like in my band, I mean, I played with a really amazing guitar player, a guy named Matt Burnside, who was super talented. He had moved here in the 10th grade, and we became fast friends. He was in our band. I mean, we were playing like Surfing with the Alien and
Oh,
Joe
wow.
Satriani tunes, and I was playing.
I was about to say that's the Satch right there.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
a two-handed tapping decent bass player. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff we were doing. Like we rented for 11th grade, we rented out the high school auditorium and ran a show there. And it was packed. We had about, 300-400 people there. And
Fuck yeah.
Our set list, like, we played some Zeppelin and, two or three Satriani tunes and, anyways, a lot of In Excess. A singer loved In Excess, the Cult, like really
sure
stuff that we're gonna do. But
so where does Jerry come in?
So Jerry comes in, between 10th and 11th grade. A guy named Mark Radjiff turned me on to Jerry, and he gave me this bootleg or something. Man, go check this guy out. He's deep. And all I could figure out is, man, he's out of tune, and this sounds like shit. What is this? I mean, that was my first. I wasn't like totally sold on the deal, but I started getting some better stuff. I picked up the, that double kind of best of that came out, had some really, early Dark Star and a couple stuff, things on. I started to see that there was something there. Especially in so I really dug the early Live Dead that, as I started to get into it, it's like I saw that there was something there. The idea of going to see the Dead. I mean, they didn't, I knew that they'd come to Dallas in '88, but this is right after, obviously after that period. And I finally started, really trading in tapes, and the tapes, like we didn't have tape trees, but we had what was called the Lone Star Dead here in Dallas. It's one of the longest running Grateful Dead radio shows in the United States. It's still going. And, so every Friday night, like the spring tour, spring tour show, like when they, this dude there, another friend who passed away, ran this show. He would have the, like spring tour finished. We'd have the tapes, we'd have, hey, this is Cal Expo run. So it was kind of, you got in the idea of trading tapes and became friendly with them up there and getting shows and they still existed then. This was something you could actually see the Dead if you wanted to, finally, I think, it would have been, the summer of '89, I got a chance to go with a friend of mine who had family in New York. And so I saw the Dead, on a summer in New York, and was blown away. Totally. I mean, just was,
were they playing with Brent already at that point?
Yeah, this was the last summer of Brent. This is his last summer of Brent. I only saw one show with Brent.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, he passed the day I was born.
Oh man.
So that's, yeah.
I just remember how much of a force he was in that band. Even then he was really like months from death, and still, I mean, I guess 6-8 months, but the point is, he was a huge part of the show then, Blow Away. And
well, which is one of my all-time favorite Grateful Deads. I mean, bar none. I mean, shout out to previous guest and friend of the show, Mark Serlo, for creating my favorite piece of art on a pin of all time. His rendition of the Feather in the Whirlwind. After I'll send you a picture, or I'll post one up here, but sure. It is just one of my favorite. And, that's really amazing to be able to have seen him.
Man, you have some access to some really eclectic art. I really cherish the Jerry sheet that I got from you. It's pretty amazing. Super sweet.
That, I believe Mark had a hand in that as well.
Yeah. Oh wow. That makes sense.
Same. Yeah.
So, I think, the first time, I think the first show that I really kind of got it and wasn't just, just kind of just trying to see what was going on, is so I went to Tempe, Arizona. I had a girlfriend who lived in Tempe, and went to school out there, and I went out there on a bus and saw the two shows in the, I think it was in December of 90, and early December. And, I remember they opened, I think the second day, I think they opened with a Victory in the Crime. That was a second set opener. But I just remember, just the kind of knowing the music more and really, really getting into it. It's like, wow, this is something, could totally get into. And, ended up going again in the summer. We drove up because I'm in Texas. You can only go to shows. Like, there's such an East Coast, West Coast band, although they were pretty much everywhere. We ended up, doing, the Mile High show. They played in Mile High in the summer there in 91, I think. And Santana had just been busted, and he was busted for weed down in New Orleans, and they had to postpone the show to let him get out of jail and come to the show. And he did go up and put on a great show. There was amazing Wharf Rat at that show. I remember, drove all the way, from, in home, pretty lit all the way from Colorado to come back.
What a time to be alive. Yeah, man. I mean,
super cool.
I mean, people can talk a lot about it, but for my money, late 80s, early 90s, Dead is the best pound for pound Dead that there is. I think of the March, Nassau, the March Nassau run, and, the late Brent years, obviously, but who packed such a punch. It's my favorite, live Dead to listen to. And,
I mean,
so been around it.
That era is pretty strong Dead. I know, and again, I really cut for a lot of earlier stuff earlier. I like the 74 Wall of Sound era stuff, but my favorite is early 80s. I mean, for Jerry's playing, I'm an 81, 82 guy. I think it was just playing wise, but the band was just, I think, hitting on, I think Jerry had that period, where he kind of got clean a little bit with when he was doing the stuff with Grisman there, and that 87, 88, I think he started to get, not used as much, and was kind of really getting himself back. I know he kind of fell back into it in 89 and, whatever, but that was a pretty serious period for them. And I think, and then when, Hornsby first showed up, it really drove him. And in a way that I thought there was a lot of cool exploratory stuff going on. And it was cool to see that. I remember that the run, Atlanta, 92, driving out to Atlanta. And that whole run was really, really, really fun. And I remember Jerry was just throwing notes in that place. It was he's throwing notes, man. It was
just sprinkling them.
Yeah, just sprinkling
the notes. Little for you, little for you, little for you.
I think it was the first time I ever actually, just saw, wasn't going to a show or driving to a one-off or whatever. That was the first run I went to, I think.
I gotta say, on the topic of sprinkling around notes, and my mother and I agree on this, but I've always felt that the magic of Jerry's guitar playing was the notes he didn't play. He always allowed for so much room and space to breathe. And, he would play, rapid when he wanted to, but typically, you think of a Wharf Rat or a Standing on the Moon, and the way he would just bend a note when he could have filled it with so many more, but gave the note the respect it deserved for the time and the place. It's always been for me about the notes Jerry didn't play. And, which is maybe why I like the more contemplative early 90s years, with Bruce, who was such a driving factor in that music. And the first ever time I saw in any Dead member in any iteration whatsoever, was in May 2009 at Allstate, when they were touring as the Dead. And it was, Bill, Billy, Mickey, Bobby, Phil, Jeff Chimenti, Bruce Hornsby, and Warren Haynes. And I grew up with stories from my mom and my uncle, about being at the last show and about being on tour in the late 80s, early 90s. But I didn't understand it until I saw it. And I just think like, oh man, like what I missed, and, even though you only started seeing them in 89, that's still a good chunk of years, and then to go on a little run in 92. I mean, that's just awesome. Any way you slice it.
I saw about 26 shows in all, and and I have so many of my friends, like friends that I even my age, that have been seeing him since the mid 80s, early 83. But these guys, it's just a matter of place. If you lived on the fucking East Coast, excuse my language, if you lived on the East Coast, you could just go around in your own backyard and see 15 shows, in a couple weeks,
Yeah, between East Rutherford and the stadium and MSG, you could knock out.
You could get it all taken care of, Connecticut, Hartford, or those runs, so it's just a matter of place. I had to actually go somewhere. I never forget, in the summer of 92, my friends and I, we all drove to Vegas to do the Vegas run, which was cool. That was 93 with Sting, but 92, we drove out there. We drove all night, never been to the Grand Canyon before. And we got to the Grand Canyon, you drive up the highway, and we just drove as far as we could. We were so tired. We decided to camp, like you could literally, it was like a lookout for, the Grand Canyon. And you could literally, it's pitch black, but you could feel the thing there. I mean, you're like standing on the edge, where the parking things are. And you're like, man, there's something out there, and, we all went to sleep there on that little area. We got our bags out and whatever. And I guess everybody got up in the morning, and I was still sleeping. I woke up to about 20 Japanese people taking pictures of me on the edge. We're in some tourist lookout. We had no idea. Like I look up there, and they're like, "Oh, look at it! Look at the vagabond American out here." Just
look at the American in his natural habitat.
Oh my God, it was funny. They thought it was hilarious, my buddy. And then we drove on, because by the time you're an hour away, or an hour and a half or whatever, and it got to Shakedown, and those were some killer runs. That was the first time. I mean, you hear about all these shows where the environment is kind of in an outdoor show, and I think it was the second night. It's like during this Drums in Space, this massive purple nasty thunderstorm came up into the desert. Like it was off in the distance. It was just like crazy. And and they're like hitting the drums, and thunder, boom, is coming, like lightning. It was the first time it's like they're playing the weather. It was like
with nature. Yeah.
They're playing looks like rain, and starts raining. You hear all this stuff. This is the first time I ever saw, wow.
It's funny you say that specifically, because I remember being, seeing fish play Water in the Sky or Petrichor when it starts raining.
Yeah.
It's like, the way they kind of I was like, oh yeah, they know. Or Divided Sky when it stops raining. So I've seen all three of those things happen, and they're all, magical moments.
Super magical moments. Yeah. I mean, it was like literally like drum wars with the, with the lightning and thunder. It was huge. Yeah. And then they come out and they do the smokestack lightning, out of drums. It was super cool. But yeah.
So meantime, how, at this point in time, had you begun your journey as a luthier yet, or is that still a ways away?
It's quite a bit farther till I start becoming a luthier. I did start playing guitar by 91, 92, 93. I started playing guitar. I still played bass, but I still I started playing guitar as an instrument and learning, and kind of I had some personal struggles at that time with substance abuse, and and some of that time period is bittersweet for me, but when Jerry did finally pass in 95, that that October, I got turned on to fish. A buddy of mine was doing the security there at the Fort Worth auditorium, and said, "Hey man, I think I can take you there and meet these guys."
Wow.
Running those security, my first show, and you know, and I'd had fish. Fish was like on the, like as filler on some dead tapes and stuff, like Googly apparatus on a couple of just filler on the back of dead tapes and stuff. So I was not familiar.
I saw you.
I was like, man, what are these guys doing? Just thinking about cell parts. So, but yeah, that was super cool. And I did get to meet the whole, I bet that I wanted to meet Trey. That was the machine gun Trey area. He was doing, all the machine gun whales. I mean, Life on Mars. It was just crazy first show. And I waited all night. I'm back there. I was drinking Lone Star beers with Mike, Paige, and John, waiting for Trey to come out, and he never comes out. I mean, like 45 minutes. We're like, these kids kind of, talking to them. They got, whatever. They're hanging out with whoever. They were super gracious, nice guys, really approachable back then. So I was kind of, turned just, Jerry hadn't been dead, I don't know, a month or two, at that point. But I obviously did mods on my own guitars. I did repair work. I did setups for people. So I did like stuff like that. And I had some woodworking experience going back, with my grandfather. And they had a commercial printing business, and they did a lot of, they had to do a lot of maintenance and do welding and fixing stuff and stuff there in the shop. They had a guy there, this guy, Johnny Mack, who was really good with his hands, did a jack of all trades, the kind of guy. But, but the truth is, it goes back to 2000. I mean, we're looking back 2010. It's damn near, almost 15, 20 years later before I start actually building guitars. And, I had been in 2008, 9, and 10. I was actually in Ghana, mining. We had a gold mine, a couple of 25-acre concession gold mines, that with my mother-in-law helped finance and successful. And I was living in the jungle in the dry time and mining and I had imported excavators and all this kind of stuff and doing the whole, gold rush thing before gold rush happened.
Holy shit, that's wild. And
my father-in-law got ill. He had got diagnosed with dementia, and they didn't want to put him in any kind of care, and they really needed help with them at the house. And if you had to put him in the shower, help him get up, do whatever, I needed to be there. I couldn't be off in Africa or whatever. So that's kind of where it started. I was like, well, I'm here. I'm here sitting all day. I can't do another job. Why don't I build, I really want to try a hand at this. I'm going to be here anyways. Why don't I build, you want to start trying to build guitars? I mean, I literally started reading books and I thought if I'm going to build a guitar, I'm going to build a Jerry Garcia guitar. I mean, I'd been, it was the only thing I could, wanted to do. And
it makes sense.
Read. And, my mother-in-law was cool enough we built another garage. We had a contractor come in, build another garage. I took the 400 square feet and built a little wood shop out there and just started hacking away, trying to make something happen. Literally, I cringe when I look at the guitars I made back then. But I mean, the first guitar I made, I sold to a guy on eBay in Germany. And, I was like, wow, they paid me $1,500 for this thing,
There you go. Well, hey, how long did it take you to turn around that first guitar?
First guitar took about a year.
Okay.
Took about a year because I mean, a lot of fits and starts, a lot of stuff that didn't make the cut. And finally got something worthwhile. And the thing about this building, these guitars, none of the hardware is available. So yeah, learn how to cut the metal. I used to cut the metal pieces that you need for the specified metal. You have to do the metal work, not just the Luthier. You have to really know a lot of different things to make one of these happen.
So when Mike was on the show from MJL Guitars, the previous luthier we've had on the show, he does a lot of woodworking and, was able to speak on a lot of the woodworking components. We filmed the episode last season in his studio, and you just talked about the more mechanical elements and more than just the bass and the body, because as our little Jerry is playing right here, when you're making a Bertha, which is already a custom guitar, you can't just go to your average Guitar Center and purchase those components. So what other elements of the guitar did you have to learn how to craft in order to create one of these replicas once you set your mind to it?
You have to also be like a machinist, and the difference between the machinist and a woodworker, there are a lot of difference, but a woodworker, deals in 1/16 of an inch, and a machinist deals in thousandths and tenths of thousands. The accuracy, the level, material, is orders of magnitude in accuracy. So learning to, and there are a lot of woodworkers say, well, you don't, if you're trying to mill something within 1/1000th of an inch, it's just going to catch the air and moisture and move 4 thou anyways, or move 5 thou. But my philosophy, and with any of these things, is, you shoot for the thou, and, and if something moves or something changes, it's fine. But as long as you're shooting for that higher accuracy, the higher level of precision, the end result will build up over the instrument and get something that is a higher quality. And I think that's where all of the Alembic, Rick Turner, Doug Irwin, Frank Fuller, all these guys that were, the Rick Wickersham, Ron Wickersham, these guys were trying, nobody liked what even Gibson or Fender had to offer. These production guitars that, were not consistent. Maybe there'd be dead spots on the neck. And a lot of this had to do with just, lack of attention to detail.
Was this an issue? I was going to ask, was this more of an issue of mass production than anything else?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to,
obviously. Sure.
For our readers and viewers, just so they're aware, because what we're talking about here is, there was kind of a flooding of the market, so to speak, as the electric guitar became more and more popular. And the reason why a lot of musicians eschewed those mass-produced instruments is, like Leo was saying, that TLC, that tender love and care, that you show to each instrument, is, we could see you have some behind you. It really, it takes that personal touch and that personal affect and that extra mile and that real, putting your own blood, sweat, and tears into something to make it that much better, that much warmer, that much lighter, that much more personal,
Sure.
And therefore an altogether better instrument.
Yeah. And I think that was, and I think that was the philosophy, that they were, and the other thing is that Jerry liked things about Gibsons and things about Fenders, specific things that he wanted to bring together. Like, he liked the Fender scale. He liked a 25/5 scale. He didn't like the short scale, which is standard, a Gibson, 24/7/5. And that's the length of the instrument from nut to bridge. And so he liked that longer scale, but again, he liked the long travel bridge, the bridge that they used to put on the Gibsons. He liked the way the bridge and a tailpiece, because it allows the string tension to pull back and get tension down on the bridge itself, and get a better ringing of the note. I mean, they would take the nuts and they replace it with a brass nut to get rather than bone or plastic, depending on what it was, to get a more definition, more ring. They used machine brass bridge blocks. They put these huge, like in Alembic basses and guitars, they'll put this huge piece of brass that sits under the bridge to give it that much weight and definition underneath. So they thought a lot about, what am I doing? Every little thing I could do to make this thing be ring out better, have the notes, every note be defined and play in a certain way. And that was kind of the philosophy that made these instruments, especially Olympic, kind of took forward as a build philosophy, and just really were the Ferrari of its day. I mean,
So
yeah.
talk to us a little bit about the man, the myth, the legend, Doug Irwin, who crafted Jerry's guitars, and what was special about him, and why he and Jerry worked together to develop his guitars.
I mean, the story is that, and again, I did not meet Doug, started in 2010. It was not till 2019 that I actually finally got to meet Doug. And really for all this time, nobody really knew where the guy was. I mean, there were the rumors that he was sick, he died, he was whatever.
And can I ask this real quick?
Sure.
So, I mean, obviously people knew who he was, right? Or who he is. But I think that's just kind of like quintessential secondhand talent right there. Is that like, you're kind of like, you've been lost to the sands of time because you just don't want to be seen. And that's a pretty incredible thing to be able to pull off.
It's kind of an interesting thing. And it all has to go back to the way he was treated, with the guitars being willed to him. I mean, Jerry specifically, if you think about it, this is a strong thing. Jerry passes away and he's got things in his will about, hey, I want my daughters and my family to get so much money. I want this and this. But the only thing he really gives away are his guitars. And he gives them, he mentions his brother in his will, but generally the only specific bequeathment he has in his will is to give the guitars back to their maker. And from what I understand, Bob and the drummers got together to sue him to say, hey, he didn't own these guitars, and there was a lawsuit, and it was actually Phil who stepped in and had a deposition and said, Jerry would be rolling over his grave. This is ridiculous. We all knew the talent was in our band, and Jerry didn't take $1 more than anybody else. We split everything 5 ways, and we made a deal very early on that any instruments we bought were part of the deal. And this is our, axe parts of the trade, tools of the trade. And nobody's asking Billy to give his drums back. And it was actually his deposition that made the case actually settle. And he did end up getting Wolf, Tiger, and Wolf Jr., which actually had already been sold by one of the roadie's sons. So he actually only got these 2 guitars, and Rosebud went to the band, and it's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So in this deal, Harry's wife, short-time wife, went to the Supreme Court of California and there was a codicil part of the will that said any of the taxes and fees associated with the sale of these instruments were to be paid by the estate. And she went and got that nullified by the California Supreme Court. I don't know idea how she did it, but she got a guy's will posthumously nullified. But anyways, it worked out that way. And Doug was stuck. He got the people that brokered the sale really screwed him on the money. He got probably 20 or 30% of what the total value of the guitars were. And he had a tax bill that was massive. So when I first met him, he goes, yeah, I've been hiding from Aunt Iris. And I said, Aunt Iris, Aunt Ursi. Yeah. And I said, Ursi. He's like, yeah, he goes, the IRS, man. He was like, he like was, because he owed taxes on these guitars. So he like was trying to not, I guess whatever he was doing, it had to do with the tax bill on selling these instruments. And that's why he kind of disappeared. But I have a long-term for Aunt Ursi. That's right. I had a long-term, this guy, Eric Larson, who's a good friend of mine, saw the Dead since the early 80s and he was part of, there's a website called Dozen.com. And it's very old, but it's the first compilation of the guys that were trying to see the gear that the Dead used. And it's like a compilation website. It's been up forever, but the information that is on that website is this guy Dave Fontaine and Eric Larson got together with all the roadies. There's pictures of them with the Healy behind the soundboard. I mean, they knew these guys. They would get back and get the information, all the information they could get about Jerry's amps, the basses, the guitar, all that kind of stuff. They all compiled on this thing. And that was some of the first information I ever had about how to build one of these things.
It's amazing. It's amazing to hear that, because that was before my time. And part of the inspiration for this show was the Wall of Sound tour, and the idea that there are so many, dozens and dozens of crew members going across the country for 3 years, building this massive experiment in sound, and how many of them can the average fan name today? And it's so sad that all those stories have been lost to time. And that's part of why Secondhand Talent exists, is the platform, the stories of those folks who make live music happen. That was
Ramrod, Steve, Big Steve's, but when their Ramrods passed, but so some of these guys are still around, but not a lot.
Yeah, not enough. And it's a shame that their stories were never, cared for or recorded in the same way. I mean, no shade on the band whatsoever, but
sure.
Like the band were, like you said, they knew who the star was, but we knew that the band were the stars. It wasn't that we're Secondhand Talent for a reason, but at the same time, we can acknowledge that it is a shame that those stories mostly are lost to time.
You're absolutely right. So, and I always thought the whole Wall of Sound thing was amazing. It must have been incredible. And everybody I know, I have one friend who was at Watkins Glen, and someone early on I met, in this process, and he saw several Wall of Sound shows, and he talked about it was just the sound and fidelity was amazing. And what I've been spending my time with recently redoing this mission control base, which was made to interface with the Wall of Sound. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And obviously it's the 50th anniversary of the Wall of Sound last year, and moving into now, recording of Blues for Allah.
Yep.
And this
help slip Frank.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think so. Getting back to Doug, and so the point is, this guy Eric, who has been a friend of mine, and I never had actually met at this point, but I met it. There was an old thing called Are You Kind? Are You Kind was a forum, and it was on forever, and it was where musicians would talk about. There was a gear part, and they would talk about guitars, and without that Are You Kind, I would never got my start. I sold probably my first 12 or 14 guitars on that forum.
And were you strictly making replicas, or were you making all sorts of guitars?
I went straight. I started making wolves, and within 3 or 4 years, I made my first Tiger, and I made some Rosebuds. I probably made 70 or 80 guitars at this point, but that's all I was making. And everyone I was improving. At first, I was just using like the best photos I could get and doing comparative measuring, using calipers and known measurements, and trying to figure out, because there's no plans for this,
Right.
This is put together and how this happens, from little pieces of articles, little stuff here and there. And then as I got more well known, Jay Blakesberg was super instrumental in getting me the first really high resolution photos of these guitars, to a point where I could get things more accurate and clear as to what was going on. And he was super cool to me.
I mean, at the time of this taping, Jay may or may not be on later this season. So
yeah. And so Jay was super cool to me. And I think, so it was finally I started talking to this guy, Eric, and I didn't even know at the time he was behind the Dozen.com deal, but he said, I have this buddy, Dave Fontaine, who was part of this also. And in the 90s, early 90s, so Doug never went to Dead shows early on. I mean, like the 70s, 80s, I mean, he may have been to a few, but he didn't become a staple of the scene till the 90s, till 91, 92. Like he was on all the Jerry Band tours. He was all there, but he was not going to shows, and he was like selling Tiger t-shirts. He told me the story about for Jerry's birthday, he got like 40 chicks with tiger underwear, like with right on the crotch had a tiger, and got, them all to stand up and show that all 50 chicks. Yeah. With the tiger underwear to show Jerry for his birthday. And they all flashed him. Anyways, Doug did some crazy stuff. So, but he was more of a staple at that point. At this time, Harry called Doug and said, because there's this kid, Dave, he's been bothering me since like 83 to buy a guitar. You can always use extra money. Why don't you build this kid a guitar? His dad's a doctor. He's got money. Why don't you build him a guitar? And it was the only time Jerry ever called Doug and said, build this kid a guitar. And they went on somewhere on the East Coast and bought the wood to build this guitar and everything like that, and had delivered to California for him and all this kind of stuff. And this guitar is almost done, but still not done. This is from 1990, but he had been working on it all along. But that was the thing. Eric was like, hey, I know Doug. If we could find him, I really want to get this guitar done for my friend. He'd like to have it before this guy shuffles off the mortar coil. And you can meet him, and I'm sure he would love to meet you and, see what you're doing. Bring one of the guitars. And in March or April of 2019, I made a call to Larry Robinson, who is the most amazing inlay artist on the West Coast. We worked at a limit after Doug did, but he did the millionth Martin. He's done amazing stuff for Gibson, for everybody, but there's in the Smithsonian's the millionth Martin. It's the most amazing inlay, crazy freaking thing. It took him 6 months to do this thing, but he is a super, super talented guy. And he knows Doug. He's from the area where Doug's from. He's from the wine country there. And I said, Larry, do you know if Doug's still around? Do you know how to get in touch with him? My buddy's known him for a long time. If Doug heard his name, he'd know who he is. Could you pass on his number? And he goes, I know, I have his number. I know where he is. He was staying with his mom, but I know, he's up in, this city in Northern California. It wasn't 3 or 4 days later, Eric got a call from Doug. And Eric went up there in a couple of weeks. He lives in Oregon. So he drove down to where Doug was and met with them. They reacquainted, hadn't seen each other since the 90s. And he said, hey, I got this kid, Leo. He's been building guitars like yours. You should really see what he's doing. There's a lot of kids out there doing this shit, but nobody's doing it like him. Doug agreed to meet me after this trip. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I was supposed to deliver a guitar at the Warfield for Zach Nugent. Built a rosebud guitar for him. I was delivering a guitar to him anyway, so we flew in and brought the guitar up to Doug to show him what I was doing. That and obviously with the idea of maybe working with the guy, like, hey, this is Doug Irwin, man. Think about all the stuff we could learn. We met, we had a great time meeting Doug. He was at his place, and, you go to his house, and the first thing is he has a big wolf knocker, like a big brass, it looks like from Transylvania or something on his door.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And super cool. And there's just pieces, half-built guitars that were just stuff everywhere in his shop, like total pieces of history.
Wow.
And pleasure to meet the guy. And I showed him the guitar I built, and he's like, where'd you get Jerry's guitar? And I was like, that's not Jerry. I said, I built this. He's like, you built this? He goes, you're going to put me out of business. What is this? He freaked out. He was like, wow, this is pretty good, I guess. I don't know what he was thinking, but
wow.
He has that really gravelly voice, super gravelly voice.
I feel like him saying, wait a minute, where'd you get the guitar? That's like the highest order of compliment you could possibly get.
Yeah. It's like, how do you bring this here? I was like, no, I built this thing. And he's like, wow. And we hit it off and laughed a lot and smoked some bud and had a good time, and took him down to the Warfield. And, took him down to the Warfield and delivered this guitar. He got to hear, he's like, wow, that guitar sounds beautiful. Like, we were sitting in the back. I think Kid Caballero, I'm trying to remember his last name. Caballero, I think it is. Betty, I met Betty Boards, Betty there. Kid, it was another roadie who's building cables now, doing stuff. Melvin, this was obviously, he was playing when Zach was playing with Melvin. It was just cool. I'd never been there. You go down in the Warfield, see Cherry's dressing room. It still says Garcia on it.
You feel the energy in a place like that.
It's like a pilgrimage. I had never been to San Francisco. Oh yeah.
I remember my first time at Haight-Ashbury and I'm, in my generation and I was still, I felt, it was like, wow, chills being on that corner. It's a special, beautiful place. Yeah, it is kind of like a pilgrimage. So before we finish off this week's episode, you have a special announcement that you want to lay down. Yeah.
And by the time this airs, it'll be ancient history. Should have happened by now. But anyways, I was called by another builder. His name is Bill Asher, and he was supposed to have a base. He will have a base built for O'Teal for a foundation that O'Teal has, and he was not going to be able to get it done in time for this Sphere run, and came to me and asked if I could have a base ready that O'Teal could play at the Sphere, and then use it and then auction that base off for his foundation.
That's awesome.
And so I'm super thrilled that I've worked on this mission control project. I'm building 10 of these, just like Phil's mission control base, like this. Pretty sweet. And we got the Osiris on the back and everything. So, and I have one, this is not O'Teal's, this is actually Skip's base. But he is actually we're not sure on the date yet, but he'll be playing the bass, during the first set. And I'm super thrilled to have that happen. And,
I was going to ask, how does it feel having your instruments in the hands of these musicians, who are carrying on the legacy of the dead? Like you gotta feel good about that.
I mean, that's really what I love. I love the fact that, pretty much everybody that's anybody, pretty much, minus Mayer, has one of my guitars, plays one or more, and to have several, with Jeff Mattson, he has a Wolf mine and the woolly mammoth guitar I designed for him. Any of these guys, all the best guys in the industry play my instruments, and I love it because that means on any given weekend in any, dead quarter of the United States, somebody's listening to one of my guitars and enjoying the shit out of it. So one of the things I feel about this is it's not just like mimicry or anything. They're giving somebody that's going to help, that's going to bring them, drive them, make them play better, sound better. The instruments themselves draw people in. They draw. The instruments are crowd draws. Like there's this kid, I don't know if you're familiar with Dogs in the Pile, but I'm going
to see them in November. I'm not sure. It'll be a few months after the time of this airs.
He may have my instrument by now, and I'm building a guitar for Jimmy Law.
All right.
Maybe build, hopefully. We'll see.
Shout out Dogs in a Pile. Looking forward to seeing you guys November 6th at Garcia's.
Love those guys. And Garcia's just opened, right?
Yeah, it did at the time of this taping. Absolutely. I'll be there at the time of this taping next week to go see Lamp, which I'm really excited about.
So Lamp, fucking badass. So anyway, love those guys. We saw them at an after party. But the key with this, so Garcia's, another client of mine, Bob McCarthy, another famous dead guy, he works for Meyer Sound. He designed, the system that first would live mix the room, that would take in the room. He designed the computer system that could, in real time, take the humidity, how many people were in the room, the temperature, the shape of the room, all that stuff that Meyer Sound puts in their little computer, he designed that system, and with a million other things for Meyer Sound, and making live entertainment, the whole line array system. That's Meyer Sound. Every concert you see, it may not be Meyer Sound, but they're the ones who designed that idea. And
it's amazing to be able to be not just the influence and influenced by, but to also carry on the legacy. And
for everything. Said he did. The point is Bob did Garcia's sound system, Meyer sound system in there. So it's going to be. I mean, it is going to be
the two paired together is the way it should be.
The way it should be. So Bob had just told me, he said, "Man, we just finished the sound system there. It's supposed to be sick."
Well, I can't wait to be there. It'll be secondhand talent at the second generation of some firsthand music. Dude, Leo, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for being the kickoff to season 5. This is going to be an incredible season, and I could not think of a better way to start it off. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. You've been a great friend, and I appreciate knowing you. And what a great show. Keep it going, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks again to Tenacious Toys. Thanks to Luke Chu. We're looking forward to bringing out everything that this season has to offer. For Steiner, this has been an episode of Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday.
See you on the flip side.
That's a podcast. There we go.